Friends, welcome to my channel Sushant Chess Wise. Today we are going back to king and pawn endgames. Okay, so last time we saw king and pawn versus king. Today also we are going to continue with the same theme. We looked at the case of middle pawn last time. We looked at the king which was in the middle of the board and how to promote the pawn to queen. Today we will see the case of rook's pawn. Since it is slightly different and the theory has to be known for both the sides, white or black. Okay, let's see what happens here. See, first problem is with the rook's pawn. See, there is only one side, so this king can approach from only one side. So the other side of the board doesn't exist. Okay, so winning becomes very difficult. So first we must know that this pawn versus king and king. What happens in rook's pawn? If the king is on any of these four squares, then black is able to hold the game easily, means black can draw the game. Okay, one who is pawned out, white or black, can draw the game. Okay, so let's get started. First we will see what happens. White plays the king to g2. Okay, black can play the king to g8, taking a distant opposition. Okay, see the squares between them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares between them, and both are on the same color. So this is a distant opposition. So white will take his king ahead using the same technique. Okay, now king goes ahead. Okay, and now black again gets the opposition. Now what white will do? White will waste the pawn move like in the previous example and put black on the move. So black plays the king to h6, king moves to h4, and now black again plays the king to g6. The first problem. See, if this pawn would be anywhere in the middle, the king would have got placed here to go out, and then the pawn would have advanced. But the problem here is there is no other file. So white has to continue kg4, black again goes kh6. Now white has to push the pawn. This is the only way, he has to advance his pawn. So again kg6, h5, kh6, kh4, taking opposition. King goes to g7. Best is h7, but here it doesn't matter. King g5, kh7, h6. Now black can play slightly carefully, going to h8 first. It's best to come in front of the pawn like an opposition, okay, on the same color of the pawn, so that when the king comes ahead, we can take the opposition. Now what we note, if this position we discussed like position number 1, but here what happens, whether it is white to play or black to play, whoever has the move, it will be drawn. Because let's say white to play as in the game, then h7, king h8, now wherever the king moves, either the pawn is lost, or if the king moves to h6, it becomes stalemate. See, h6 is stalemate. Stalemate will draw the game. Okay, and if this position, let's say it's black to play, then also nothing, king goes to h8, and after pawn moves to h7, again it is stalemate. So this position is very important, and what it teaches, that these two squares play an important role. For instance, if the king would have gone to f8, after h7, these two squares both are controlled. See, by the pawn, g8 is controlled and g7 is controlled by the king, and the pawn will promote to queen. So the key squares become g7 and g8 for the h pawn, and for the a become important. Okay, so I will try to show you one more theoretical position to understand this in a better way. Let's look at this position. White has again got the rook pawn here, and now it is race between the two kings. Both are trying to reach, white is trying to reach the g7 square so that the pawn can reach the h8 square easily, and black is also trying to occupy any of these four squares. That does well most of the times. There are some cases when he cannot occupy these squares, but still he can draw the game. So let's look at this position here. It's white to play. This position we will do for both. In most theoretical positions, we consider it white to play and black to play both. So let's start with white to play. So white wants to occupy the g7 square quickly. So he goes king g5. Okay. Black comes kd7. Okay. Now white goes king g6. He can also go king f6. Okay. Now black comes ke7, and now the very important move, the king has to go to g7. Now suppose white messes up and plays the pawn to h4, then the king will reach f8. Once the king reaches f8, the only position which wins for white, then he has to have a pawn here on h7. Okay, then only he can promote. Otherwise, after h5 now, king comes to g8 and the game will be drawn. Just now we discussed this position. So the game will be drawn. So what white does here is, after the moves kg5, kd7, kg6, ke7, king to g7. Very important move. Now black's last chance is to bring the king and attack the white pawn. So after h4, king f5, h5, kg5, the pawn simply reaches h6. It is supported over there, and in couple of moves we will see that the white pawn will queen, and with king and queen we have already learned in a previous lesson how to win checkmate with king and queen. So this was about it when white has the move. Let's see with black to play whether black can hold the game. So let's look at the position with black to play. The black king has to reach the key squares, that is g7 and g8, then only it can draw the game. In this position, the moves k, d8, d7 and d6, all the three lead to the same position, but the logic says since we want to reach g7 or g8, we don't want to come near the pawn, okay? So we should use the square d7. So black plays kd7, okay? White goes kg5, black plays the king to e7, and now white goes king g6, and after the move king f8, we see that now next move king is by force going to reach g8 and the game will be drawn. See, after h4, kg8, h5, kh8, it's an easy draw. We discussed this just now, okay, couple of times. Now here white has last chance of playing kh7 and stopping the move kg8. Okay, so now the fight is going on for these two squares, g7 and g8. So all black has to do is just keep eye on these two squares. So black just plays the move king f7. Now if king goes to h8, then king will come to g6 and capture the pawn. So king h8, kg6, kg8, kh5, it will capture the pawn this way. And if the king comes back to h6, then the king goes to g8 and it's drawn. So the only chance for white is to push his pawn. So white plays h4, black plays king f8, white plays h5, black plays king f7. Just black has to wait. Now pawn goes to h6. Again, now see here, if he plays the king to f6, then he will concede the g8 square. So the g8 square will be given up. After the king reaches g8, the pawn will forcibly promote. See, kg6, h7 and the pawn queens. That is why black has to keep eye on these two squares. That is why these are called the key squares or the important squares. So after king f8, again, now see, white has no choice. Either he plays kg6, okay? So kg8 comes and it becomes draw. And if white plays king h8, then kf7, and now after the pawn goes to h7, king f8 becomes stalemate. See, white is getting stalemated on the corner of the board. Okay. Okay. Otherwise also, there is not much he can do in this position. Okay. If he keeps on moving the king, then we will keep on repeat the position. So king h8, king f7, king f7, king h8, the king position will be repeated, and we see that beyond this, white is unable to make any progress. Okay. So that is the theory for the rook pawn. We will discuss some more positions about the rook pawn in our upcoming lessons. Okay, I hope you are enjoying the channel. Do like, share and subscribe the channel. Also comment below for any of your queries. Okay, thanks for your time.